Life has a way of handing us disappointments, pain that lingers deep within. It weighs us down, shackling us from reaching our full potential. But there is a way forward. We carry the weight of our past, dragging it behind us. And we're so oblivious to the impact it has on our lives. For us to rise above, we must confront what lies within. Unpacking the layers of pain. It's not an easy journey, but it's necessary. Piece by piece, we face the wounds that have held us back. We acknowledge the hurt, the disappointment, the scars that are etched deep within. We no longer wait at baggage claim, waiting for things that no longer serve us. Imagine a life where we are no longer defined by the burdens of our past. Our actions or decisions are no longer influences of our future choices. It's time to step into your power and unleash your full potential. Join us Sunday, July 30th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, when we will discuss traveling with trauma with our special guest, Crystal Turner. Now is the time for healing. Now is the time to let go. And now is the time for transformation. You don't want to miss this discussion. We'll see you Sunday. Hello, welcome. Let's see here. I'm so sorry. Okay, here we go. I was having trouble streaming to Facebook here, but welcome. Come on in. This is going to be a beautiful discussion here at Rooted Vines. I am so happy to welcome our guest here, Crystal Turner. If you did not know here, or if you do not know about me here at Rooted Vines, my name is Mayaka Anderson. I am the owner of Rooted Vines. We are a holistic health and wellness emporium where we help to align the mind, body, and spirit so that you can live a more harmonious and balanced life. And today we have a great discussion going on, and the title is Traveling with Trauma. And we will be bringing our special guest, Crystal Turner. And if you didn't know about Crystal, or if you've never heard of Crystal, I want to just read her bio here so that you get to know her a little better. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Crystal Turner is a highly experienced registered nurse with over 24 years of dedicated service in the healthcare industry. As a passionate advocate for mental health and holistic healing, Crystal holds an advanced nursing degree as a psychiatric nurse practitioner specializing in providing care to communities of color. With over 5 years of experience in this field, she has witnessed the profound impact of trauma on mental well-being, regardless of socioeconomic status. All right. Crystal's personal journey, coupled with her keen observations, compelled her to establish Mentally Magnificent, a groundbreaking holistic mental health company. Through this platform, Crystal empowers African American leaders to confront and heal their deep-rooted trauma, guiding them on a transformative path with victimhood to self. Oh, well, self empowerment and creation, recognizing that healing begins with acknowledging and addressing trauma. Crystal emphasizes the importance of distangling work from personal experiences, allowing individuals to truly heal and show up for themselves and others in a more empowered and impactful way. At Mentally Magnificent, Crystal utilizes the power of plants, African principles, and holistic practices as integral components of her healing approach. Let's see here. Through thoughtful design classes and programs, she provides comprehensive support to individuals embarking on their healing journey. Crystal's expertise and passion also extends beyond the realm of one-on-one healing. As an inspiring speaker, she is committed to motivating the African American community to heal collectively, one person at a time. By sharing her own experiences and insights, Crystal ignites a ripple effect of healing, empowering others to embark on their own transformative paths. A native of Chicago, Crystal has firsthand experience of growing up in urban communities within her city. Her intimate knowledge of the challenges faced by these communities serves as a driving force behind her mission to facilitate healing and empowerment among African American leaders. Crystal's dedication to addressing mental health disparities and transforming lives has earned her recognition and respect within both the medical and holistic healing communities. Crystal Turner's unwavering commitment to mental health, coupled with her extensive experience, compassion, and holistic approach, make her a trailblazer in the field. Her work at Mentally Magnificent is transforming lives and inspiring individuals to reclaim their power, rewrite their narratives, and build stronger, healthier communities. I want you guys to give some great love, receive our sister, and bless her as she comes on. Crystal Turner, talking about traveling with trauma. Hello,
Oh,
Crystal.
thank you so much. How are you, Mayaka? Thank you for that
I
beautiful
am,
introduction.
oh, definitely, definitely. This is such a great topic to be talking about. I do have to say, I am having trouble with my Facebook.
Are
Before we,
you? Oh
I am. So everything that has been on has just not not come across. And
no.
so I
Really?
don't know. Yeah, at all. So I'm not sure what's going on, but it doesn't want to stream to my Facebook.
Hmm.
I'm not sure what's happening, but I have it on record. So what I'll do is I'll have to go on and play it later for my Facebook community.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
'Cause I don't know if it
So
has any impact on what I'm streaming on my side. I could stop streaming something if it impacts it in that way, maybe.
I don't know. Do you want to try and
Yeah,
take
we
off
can.
your Facebook?
I'll take off my I'll take off the what am I trying to say? I'll take off
Maybe we can't have two
YouTube.
Facebooks.
YouTube. I'm gonna try to
Okay.
take it off YouTube because I think
Okay.
I'm maxing at a max. Okay, now I'll save the changes, and you let me know if that
Okay.
makes a difference for you.
Okay. Mhm. Nope, it didn't.
No. Okay.
No, not at all.
Oh no. Well, I'll
So
just
yeah,
go
I
ahead and
don't
add
know.
that
I,
one.
I told you every time, every
I'm looking
time.
behind her like
I
I'm just trying.
know. I'm like, come on, are you serious right now? Let's see. I don't know why it's doing that.
Take a
Okay.
moment. Take a moment. It's fine. Take a moment and see if
Yeah.
you can if there's anything in particular going on.
Okay. Let me see. Take that off. And wow. We're having Facebook. This may not be each on Facebook. It's possible stream was ended or deleted on Facebook. Let's see here. My people. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to go live this way.
You have another vehicle, another method?
I'm going to try. They won't probably be able to see you, but I'm going to do it this way anyway, because I really don't know why it's doing this. Let's give me 1 second here.
Do you think that is my Facebook? Because I could stop my Facebook just to see if it makes a difference.
Okay, let's see. Maybe you
Okay.
can't have two Facebooks. Let's see what happens.
Facebook. Okay. Now I'm saving. Okay, let me know if that made a difference.
Okay. I will let you know. Let's see, go down. Let's see, will it pop up? And it's there. All right.
That's what it was. All right. Well, I have to know. I'll get it from you. Maybe you can share it to my page.
I absolutely can. Let's see here.
Perfect.
You make sure it says it's streaming, and I'm trying to make sure that it's on here streaming properly. Okay. All right. We're good. All right. So welcome, Facebook family. I'm so sorry that you missed Crystal's intro, because she is truly amazing. But one thing about this, we've got it on record, so I will put that in the group so you can go back and really see her credentials, because she is an amazing sister and she is out here doing some important work. And so let's us officially get started as we talk to Crystal Turner about traveling with trauma. Okay, so Miss Crystal, thank you so much for your patience as I get this social media together. I really do appreciate it. Let's see.
Not a problem.
Oh yes, thank you. So Crystal, as we talk about traveling with trauma, what is trauma, and how can individuals recognize if they've experienced it in their lives?
Great question. So trauma can be described as an extremely distressful or disturbing event that really makes one feel threatened in their safety, be it their life or their safety in one form or another. And I will just mention that there are two different ways that we can look at trauma. There are the big T's and the little T's. The big T's are those traumatic events that could happen one time and it impacts you in a major way. And oftentimes it's what we look at automatically as thinking is traumatic. That could be like a natural disaster that you're in, being in the military where you've served and come across close encounters with being hurt, or your safety is impacted. People who've been, sexually abused. Oftentimes, these are things that we look at as big T traumas. And it usually is something that can happen one time, one event that causes that distress. But then there are the little T traumas that may not be the magnitude of the big T traumas, but they are definitely situations where it constantly puts a person in this space where they feel their safety is at risk. And that could be on an emotional level or a physical level. That might look like being physically abused. It could look like being neglected, living in poverty, growing up in very poor environments, or violent environments where you're exposed to violent acts or you've witnessed violent acts. It could be bullying. These are those small T traumas, but typically with small T traumas, it's a situation where you've not been made to feel safe, and you're usually re-exposed to those encounters over and over again for a period of time. And how people can know that they've experienced trauma, some of the ways that we diagnose that, some of the symptoms, along with the actual event that's occurred, is often people will have situations where they have flashbacks to those occurrences that they've experienced. Be it they have, where we hear people talk about being triggered a lot, there can be an event that occurs that then takes them back to that situation where they almost feel like they are reliving it, or definitely emotionally impacted by it. People may be very anxious or hypervigilant. You may have a lot of thoughts that you don't want to think about, that you try to stop thinking about, but it's difficult. You may feel like people are out to hurt you or harm you. And for many people, they may have a lot of difficulty really thinking about that event that happened in the past, or it may be very distressing. They may avoid attempting to think about those things. So those are some ways that it can come up, but there can definitely also be fluctuations in mood, and sleep can be impacted. These are just some things to think about if you're experiencing those things.
Now, the trauma that you're speaking of, is it sort of like what people hear when those in the military have PTSD? When you're
That's a
saying
type.
reliving?
Yeah. So yes. So for example, someone who has served in the military in some way, frequently they can be triggered to feel like they are back in combat. It can really be, and that is a flashback. When
Okay.
people haven't been in that situation, they could be somewhere, they could have a conversation with someone, for example, and it could, something about that could take them back to an experience that they had. Doesn't have to be like the military, but it could just be the event that they experienced in their past. And it can take them back in that same type of a way, in an emotional way.
Wow. Wow. And I don't think a lot of people think about like the flashbacks, because you're always, it seems a lot of people live more so in the past than they do in the future. And so I always think, are people always being triggered, not knowing that they may have been in trauma, and we keep just reliving that past? I know sometimes my past will come up and I get upset because I'm like, well, you're like, you should have said this, or you should have done that, or why did this happen? And so it stops you from progressing and moving forward in your life, because we just keep going back and reliving certain things. And so it's very interesting that you talk about the poverty and the environment, how that could also play a role in trauma, especially in our communities, because a lot of our children are growing up in some really shady communities. And I'm sure they are like experience trauma on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And it's what we term complex trauma, something that didn't get a lot of recognition for many years, because we're talking about often this emotional safety that gets violated, that for many years that wasn't given credit to. There was given credit to if you were physically violated, right? If you're faced at gunpoint, you think you're going to die. If someone sexually abuses you, if someone physically abuses you, okay, we'll look at those things. This is with the physical. There's an emotional component to it, but that physicality has always gotten that recognition. But when people's pain are not things you can necessarily see on the surface in that way, but they've experienced these threats to safety from an emotional standpoint, that is what has gotten more recognition, and that we term in the way of complex trauma, because it's not as straightforward as some types of trauma would be. There's a little bit
Gotcha.
more history that needs to be gotten, and understanding of what a person's experience has been.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. I like that, because I've never heard of the complex trauma part. So that is pretty interesting. Now, as a nurse, what are some ways you have observed trauma affecting patients, and how do you approach supporting them?
Oh, that's a good question. How have I experienced them facing it? So when I see patients, especially as a role as a nurse practitioner, one big part of that is getting a thorough history. And it's one of those things that's concerning in our communities often, because in many situations, people are not with providers who are taking the time to get the history. They're just looking at the symptoms that a person presents with. And when you only look at the symptoms that a person presents with, it's so easy to misdiagnose it as something else. But when you get the thorough history, you can understand that this child before the age of 10 was having depression. They were molested, and no one ever talked to them about it. They never got help. No one was ever brought to justice. Nothing was ever done. If someone has had parents who were not available emotionally, physically or emotionally, what is that doing to a child at a young age? Or if a child is dealing with domestic abuse in their home that they're witnessing, understanding, if you can imagine how all of these can impact someone's feeling of value and safety, and how you would move forward. And so that big part for me first is, yes, I can notice symptoms that people have. Many times people present with depression or very high levels of anxiety. Sometimes people are having hallucinations. They may hear voices. They may see things. They may be very anxious, and these things can be misinterpreted as schizophrenia, as bipolar disorder. And not to say there are not people who experience that, but when you get it, when you couple that with also getting a thorough history, to say, usually if children are experiencing hallucinations, for example, as children before teenage years, it's not usually bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. There's usually something else going on. And just understanding the distress or the magnitude of distress a child has dealt with at a young age does a lot to get an understanding, as well as those symptoms that we mentioned that they may be experiencing currently. It's a lot that goes into it, but that's how I first recognize with patients, like that history. What have they really experienced, and what are they presenting with today? How is it impacting their functioning? Because truly someone who is dealing with trauma, it is impacting how they function in their current life. Be it in their relationships, be it in their ability to work or to focus or to move forward, be it in how they deal with themselves. You know, these are things that really end up being impacted in the current life, in their current life, in their current situation. And how I support them is to really make sure that I do the due diligence on my end to get that thorough history, so that I am making sure that I am approaching their needs from the right perspective, and then giving them a space to have a voice where they feel safe to do that, and give them the time that they need to do that, you know, because a lot of trust factors come into play, and we have to allow people. I have to understand that people need to earn, I need to earn that trust from someone who's been violated in many ways. And it's very hard to come into a space with someone you've never met and open up in that way.
Absolutely. I love that you speak mind, because so many people, especially in our community, you know, they may even know that you've been devastating, and they just want you to run over it. And then practitioners, sometimes you go to see the doctor, they don't, you know, you would think that they would really give you empathy and sympathy and really try to help you work through these issues. But nowadays, physicians are so busy, you know, they kind of cattle you in. And then if you're not with the right therapist, because there's certain therapists that are trained in certain areas, right? And sometimes we just get lumped into one whole system and don't get the support that we truly need. So I love that you're doing this work for a specific segment of the community that really gets overlooked or overprescribed because of the outward things that they are doing to cope with what has happened. And so I always tell people, never be ashamed of trauma, because Philippe Matthews, he always says, there's nothing wrong with you, just happened to you. And so sometimes when you put it that way, people can really see it from a different perspective and not see it as, this is my internal problem that I have to have shame or guilt about. But something was done to me that I had to build these walls, that I had to hallucinate, that I had to, you know what I mean? So I love that you're doing this, because we need this more in the community. I believe everyone does, especially now more than ever.
Oh, absolutely. And then just to speak to what you mentioned, and when we talk about providers and doctors and people who are in community, and while there are providers who come with an approach of care, there are many who don't have that cultural competence. And we know in our communities, we're always stigmatized. We're always looked at, let me not say always, but there's been a history of being stigmatized and looked at in certain ways that impacts how we receive care. And an example of that is with Black men as opposed to white men. Black men are diagnosed with schizophrenia at a much higher rate than white men.
Wow.
And a large portion of that is that if you just only look at how someone presents, and there's this perspective of someone who has schizophrenia, right? There's a big stigma around that, right? People with schizophrenia are thought of as being violent, which in many situations they're actually not. And then that violent goes in association with Black men so often. And many providers won't take the time to sit and say, okay, what is the history? Definitely not going back to like their childhood to see what are the components here that are contributing to where they are, and so because of that, I believe that is where a lot of this overdiagnosing happens. But not only that, when we talk about now how we treat in traditional Western medicine, how do we treat someone who has schizophrenia, for example? We treat them with medications that on average shorten the lifespan by 10 years because of the side effects of those medications,
Wow.
And so if we're already talking about if someone's misdiagnosed, but we're giving them these medications from this misdiagnosis, shortening their lifespan, there's a lot that needs to be addressed.
I've never heard that before.
Absolutely.
Wow. That's devastating. I've never heard that before, shortening the lifespan with these medications that are being given.
A lot of
so I knew about the side effects, but
yeah, a lot of the more recent medications used to treat certain psychosis, they have a lot of metabolic side effects. So meaning it may increase the someone's cholesterol levels, their occurrence of diabetes or high blood pressure. These are the issues they deal with because a lot of times many of those medications increase the appetite, and what people tend to eat when this increased appetite or what they tend to crave, all impacts everything.
Oh, that is so important to know. That is really important to know. What are some coping mechanisms or strategies that individuals can use to deal with the emotional aftermath of traumatic events?
I think that having an awareness is huge first, is having an awareness. Everyone doesn't have this, but if you do have someone that you trust, that you can start to have the conversation with, I think that's big, to be able to express yourself. Therapy, even more than medicine to me when it comes to dealing with trauma, can be impactful because it really is going to take, at some point, changing a way of how we view things, how we think of things, how we're approaching situations in life, right? Everyone is not a fan of therapy because there are many types of therapy that cause you to and this is not every type of therapy, but there are forms of therapy that require you to go back to maybe process the situations that have happened. And for many people, they're just not going to do that because the level of distress that they've experienced, that's not the approach they want to take, and the body doesn't really know that you're not experiencing this anymore. It just knows that your mind is thinking of this and the emotion gets connected. And as far as the body is concerned, you're having this experience again.
All over again.
For some people, therapy is not their cup of tea. But I will say that there are all different forms of therapy. Every type of therapy doesn't have to be an approach where you're going back to talk specifically about the occurrence. You can utilize therapy for coping strategies. You can use therapy for learning how to role play in situations, how to deal with difficult situations. So I would say therapy for some people, if you have trusted people that you can talk to, and then maybe also finding non-conventional ways or supports that can be beneficial in going inside and dealing with how you've been impacted and how you're viewing the world, how you're viewing yourself. All of those things can be approached in different ways, not necessarily just the traditional ways that have been introduced to us.
Oh, wow. And I love that you put that there's type of therapies. I know when I went through my traumatic experience, I went to see a therapist and she gave me a journal, bless her heart. And she's like, I need you to journal your feelings and, put them on paper. And, but I was so enraged on the inside, when I
Mm,
went home and I tried to write it out, I had so much going through my mind and my heart. It was so frustrating to try and write it because I couldn't get it out as fast as it was coming. And it
mm,
just made me even like more angrier at the task that she had given me because I wasn't prepared for that task. It was too much for me. And I
mhm,
remember I
mhm.
went back to my next meeting, um, and I walked in the room with her little journal and I threw it at her. I was so upset. And I was like, you keep your journal. This doesn't even work. And I'm done with you. I just left. I was
I
like,
I get it. I get it. And that's another thing when it comes to coping strategies is learning what does not work for you,
what
right?
does not
Because
work for you, right?
everything that a lot of people talk about journaling, and journaling is great for many people, but for some people, it's just even if it isn't about the triggering, it is that though recognizing that for yourself. But then it's also just noticing like this just
This
doesn't
isn't
work for
going
me.
to, yeah, it's
You know what
not
I
doing
mean?
anything.
Yeah, and so you don't want to have to keep doing something just because it's maybe what you hear a lot or is popular or for many people it works. You want to be able to explore a number of different avenues to see what do I notice a difference from? What does sort of touch me? Even we're not saying that it eradicates it in that moment, but we're saying
Right.
but I noticed that this actually, maybe I felt a release of something, or maybe this helps me to have some
Mm,
insight, understanding and
yes.
studying self is a big
Thank
part of my
you.
approach when it comes to
Yes.
moving out of trauma is this understanding self, because our self is what has been violated in these situations that we're in, be it someone putting upon you some belief about you that's erroneous, that's not true. If it's someone physically violating you where you don't feel safe, if it's someone not giving you love or expressing this to you, all these things are really, at the end of the day, they're things that start to cause you to look at yourself and internalize things in a way that is to your disadvantage, to our disadvantage. And so this
Absolutely.
relearning of self is a big part of this overcoming. So what's going to be that avenue for different people when it comes to this approach of going inside and relearning that?
Oh, I love that because I'm a big uh, advocate for self awareness, knowing self. Because I think that's
Mhm.
where your journey really begins, where your healing begins when you go inside. Because I always say people are so quick to point to everyone else. But it's not about everyone else. It's about you and what you're internalizing, what you're seeing, what your perspective is, all of that. You really have to get in touch and know you on every level so that you can rise up and then begin to heal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And understanding the culture that we're in a culture that it is common for you to look outside of yourself for answers on all different levels,
Yes.
and relearning that that's not, if we're externalizing our power, that could be taken away, that could be manipulated at any point in time. So is that really the real sense and the real source of our power?
Of our power. Oh, I love that. I love that. Yes. So you talked about it. You hit some points on this next question. How can someone know if they would benefit from seeking professional help for trauma, and what kind of help should they seek? So those who have experienced like real that once in a lifetime trauma that just kind of shut everything down for them versus someone who is continually stuck in those patterns and behaviors.
Mhm.
Do they seek different therapy? Do they is there certain benefits that you see in those type of patients that would help or
Not
let them know
necessarily
that
a
they are
different,
starting to heal?
yeah, not necessarily a different type of therapy, because
Okay.
we're still dealing with the same thing. So oftentimes when people have experienced trauma, let's just say as an adult, as opposed to a child, they're both serious, and I'm not here to necessarily weigh one over the other. But what I will say about people who experience trauma in their youth is that your brain is still developing, and the brain literally, as you mentioned earlier, does what it needs to do to help you get through these moments now. Even if it's not the best way of navigating, it is doing what it needs to do in the moment to just help you survive and get to that next point.
Okay.
Are you okay?
Yep, I'm there. This having some issues here.
Let me. Okay, I saw it.
Can you hear me? I'm so sorry. This thing.
Uh-oh, you okay?
Yes.
Is it better? You think it's better?
Yeah, it's the computer, I tell you. Are there any self-help exercises or practices you recommend for people to do that may be struggling to overcome trauma on their own?
So yes, what I will say when it comes to self-help, I do think that it's important to get that support. Uh-oh.
Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, keep going.
Okay, I can't see you though. I just want you to know.
Oh no, you're fine. I got you on full screen there.
Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, so what I would say in relation to what people can do for self-help. So some things, and recognizing when you do need help is important too, but just some practices that you can do on your own. I would first go to meditation. I know everyone has heard of meditation, but meditation has so much research, evidence-based research that shows its benefits in how it can impact the brain in many ways, but even from trauma or helping to manage anxiety, to manage mood, to keep you present. Because frequently when we're talking about these regulations or dysregulations in our mood or with anxiety, it's because we're going back, thinking about things, or we're thinking about the future. So doing mindfulness meditations to stay present can be big in just like the day-to-day, just to kind of ground a person and keep you present. So I would definitely say meditations that you can start your morning with, that you can end your night with, is a good coping strategy to start with. I love getting outdoors in nature, and I know for some people that could be hard because fear can be going out. But I would say that going out into nature can be beneficial. To disconnect from a lot of our social medias that can really have a lot of information that's not accurate. And it can have a lot of information that just kind of keeps you in your cycles that you're watching in those spaces. So like really trying to disconnect from those things and be more where nature is at.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are just a few that I would mention.
Oh, I love that. I think a lot of people are starting to get into meditation, and I know a lot of people are hearing more mindfulness. I love breathing techniques. I find that sometimes I carry a lot of stress for no reason. Like you just carry this weight in your shoulders, or your hands are clenched, or your back is, and then when you take that breath, you feel all of that release, and you're like, I've been walking around like this all day. Like it's amazing what we hold in, not realizing meditation or just breathing properly, just getting that breath in or taking that walk can release so much tension in your life and in your mind.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, we held onto a lot in our bodies. And so, yes, that meditation, that breath work for sure, that moving the body, all those things are a part of moving in a direction that can be to one's benefit. There could be a lot more, obviously, because people are unpacking a lot and dealing with a lot. But these are just some practical ways to help yourself in the moment, especially if you're in situations where you feel like you're getting triggered by situations. That these are things you can do in those urgent moments.
I love that because I think a lot of us are responders instead of like breathing before you respond to something. We just kind of
Mm-hmm.
jump in there, but learning to just
Mm-hmm.
kind of close your mind and just give yourself a few seconds before you respond. Sometimes things come out a lot better in situations that we find ourselves in. So I love that you
And
brought that up.
yeah, and I will also say, just also, if you're able to recognize what triggers you, then you can have some control over not being in those situations. You know, if it's certain places that trigger you or certain conversations, maybe it's certain people, then you can know how you have to balance yourself in those spaces, to give yourself a break and give yourself a moment and yourself the safety that you need, to be able to recognize these things. So it still goes on to that learning. You're learning yourself still.
Yes, yes. And I think that's a great way to keep a journal too. Like at the end of your day, how did you feel if a situation occurred, to find out what is it about that situation that got to you? Because I still do that to this
Mm-hmm.
day, because that's something I learned also. If something said and I get irritated, I have to ask myself, no, what about this situation bothered you? And then once I
Mm-hmm.
pinpoint it, I can say, okay, what process or boundaries can you put in place so that this doesn't happen again, or that you can minimize
I love that.
this happening again?
Yeah, I love that. So yeah,
Yeah.
having that recognition gives you some power to be able to now regulate it some.
Yes, yes, and just kind of grow into that role. I love that. And I think that would be helpful for a lot of people, because these are just small steps. And I always tell people, just take the smallest steps you can to your healing, and you will find yourself healed one day, able to function well and let go of those things that don't serve you, right? And that's what
Mm-hmm.
we
Mm-hmm.
all just want to give you, that start to, that it's going to be okay. We just got to put one foot in front of the other and just kind of keep going.
Yeah, and
And
when
that
you look
there's,
back, you do look back
yeah,
and you say, "Oh, I am moving forward some," and that becomes your motivation. Like, I do
right,
notice that I'm not where I was. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm also not where I was. And I know that these things that I've incorporated have helped me move me along a bit. So I want more of that. And what else can I explore that can get me in a
yeah,
better place? That's the beauty of our
exactly.
mind and our own agency, is that we can start to explore what works for us, right?
Absolutely. And not be ashamed of what works for us, and
Mm-hmm.
understand what works for you may not work for another. So it starts to build compassion and empathy for others, where, you don't have to point the finger, but you can simply walk away and say, they're just on a different path. They're in a different journey. They're trying to find their healing too. So it
Yeah.
just gives, that love back and forth, because now we can understand, because yeah, I've been there. I know what hurt looks like, and I know what hurt people can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I love that, because then not only do you start to learn about yourself, but you learn about in relationship with others once you've healed yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so to
Mm-hmm.
evaluate that and become a better person, and to start vibrating a little higher, is always a beautiful thing.
Always, always. I
Always.
love the vibes, the high vibes.
Now, we're coming close to the end, but I needed to ask you, as a nurse, what advice do you have for individuals who may be hesitant or resistant to seeking help for their traumas?
I mean, I think that what one has to really ask themselves is, where are you satisfied where you are currently? Understand that
Ooh,
the where you are, how much is it impacting you in terms of your joy currently? And most of the time we've been doing that thing for a long portion of our life. Since whatever we've experienced has happened, usually that's the thing we've been doing. And so, not in a sense to force anyone to do anything, you do have to have your timing, but I would say to really consider where you feel safe, where you could get that help. I understand that every avenue is not an avenue where you would feel like your voice is heard and that your needs will be met, but to be open to seeking this opportunity for growth. And I think when we're more open, then we get more options, more answers. I think what happens is oftentimes we're more closed off because of this pain that we've experienced, this lack of trust, this not wanting to be hurt again. We can really walk around and be more closed off than being more open where we can receive the things it is that we would want to receive.
Wow, I'm so sorry. My computer again. I'm listening, but my computer is just not, it's not working for me.
I see you though. I do see you.
I know. Oh, you can? Okay. So I'm just having some issues here and I don't know exactly why. I don't know what's going on. But this has been such a powerful conversation. Now, Crystal, I read your bio, but the people need to know how to stay in touch with you. What are you doing next? What do you have going on? And how can they stay connected to what you're doing for the communities out here?
Well, let me just give a little perspective of why what I do is so important to me, because I think about that for myself, and it's really an interesting journey that I've had. But even for myself, I've done a lot in my career and working in community, but really trauma started for me in my own personal life. It really started in my parents' life, but then that prospect, that those issues that came into our household. So, I mean, I was raised with both of my parents in my home, and I had 3 other siblings. And I was the youngest of the 4 of us.
Wow.
And I don't know if you know that younger child syndrome where we are a little bit more sassy, a little bit more funky. We're more ballsy. We're more ballsy. I was more bossy, but I definitely had a huge love for my family. I was very proud of my family as a young girl. But I also recall the day that I recognized the secrets of my family, and that was domestic abuse that was occurring. I remember waking up in the middle of the night to my dad's rageful voice toward my mom, and me wondering, what's wrong with my dad? And is my mom gonna be okay? And it really got to this point where I didn't look at my dad the same. I didn't trust him, and I felt very confused. And I took a lot of that insecurity out into my social circles. And in those circles, I became more socially awkward, where I felt unaccepted and insignificant. And I just remember throughout my life, throughout my teen years, carrying those emotions of lack of value, lack of significance. And I really wanted to be at a point where I did not experience that anymore. And so I did all the things that society tells you to do to make you feel better. So I invested in my education. I went to college and I was rolling because I graduated and I was highly successful, the first of my siblings to do that. And so I felt very proud, got my first car, got my new job in my career, purchased a home, got married, had beautiful children. But I remember being met with those same thoughts of not being valuable, not being good enough, not being worthy. And I remember, calling out and just asking to show me how to not carry this weight and how to not feel this way anymore. And it was so interesting because I recall my husband at the time having a health scare and wanting to improve his health, and he wanted to go on this vegan venture. And so I went along on that vegan adventure with him, and I started cooking all the things, making all the meals. And the interesting thing is, as I did that, I felt, and I recognized that I felt less anxiety. I felt less depressed. And it made me more interested in delving more into the different herbs and all of these things. And what I really became to recognize is that a lot of these ways came from African culture. which made me more interested in learning about African culture. And as I did that, I started to come across different principles that were used in many cultures in Africa that really impacted the mind and how to use the mind as a tool rather than allowing the mind to use me. And as I did that, I noticed that I became more lighthearted. I became more whimsical. I became more playful in my days. I noticed that I started to actually create a life that I really wanted for myself. And I wasn't in that victim role anymore. And so for many people, I understand that feeling of fear. I understand that feeling of inadequacy and trepidation. But what I also understand is the ability to rise above that. And I love this one quote from Tracy McMillan that says, everything works out in the end. And if it hasn't worked out yet, then it is not the end. And that's my encouragement to people, is to try something different that you maybe haven't tried before that can get you different results. And for me, that's where I've developed Missly Magnificent, is taking holistic approaches, not necessarily the traditional approaches of our culture where we are now, but I really take the approach of holistic practices and African principles and the power of plants and how that can be very beneficial to creating this harmony with us, mind, body, and spirit. And so for Missly Magnificent, you can find me on Facebook. My Facebook group is Missly Magnificent. On Instagram, I'm mentally_magnificent. But I'm also having a free online training this Tuesday at 7 p.m. And it's called From Trauma to Triumph, where we really delve more into the aspects of trauma, but more than that, how it's showing up in our lives personally. And more than that, how do we move out of that? How do we rise out of that to be the creators of the world we want to see?
Oh, I love that. I hope you hear that, family. Tuesday at 7?
Yes, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. So I'll put I don't know if this will show up on your side, but I'll put the link in the comment section.
Definitely do that. And then I'll ask Crystal to send me some information and the link, and I will put it in the Facebook group for those of you who would like to take advantage and learn a little more about Crystal and what she does, so that you can overcome whatever trauma it may be that's going on in your life. Or if you need to recognize if there's any trauma that you have gone through, because some people don't even recognize what they've gone through is trauma. They've just built these walls all over the place. And they just say, I've always been like this. We just don't come out with trust issues. We just don't come out the womb. You know what I mean? With relationship issues. Something happened that all of a sudden we have a hard time relating to other people, that we want to be closed in and not go out. All of a sudden we're procrastinating on everything. So definitely check her out Tuesday at 7. And like I said, I'll drop the link. Crystal, this has been amazing. I know it may seem like I was a little skitsy around here because this computer just don't, you're trying to be out here and help people. And it's like it knows that you want to do something positive,
You are doing something positive. It's not going to stop anything. It's not going to stop anything. It's like you said, you'll be able to repost it, and I will give you all the information you need to put into your community so people will have it. So I appreciate you having me on and giving me the opportunity to share, as this mission is so means everything to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as you guys can see, her logo's up in the corner. So if you're looking for her on Facebook, if you're looking for her on YouTube, make sure you take notice of the logo in the corner so you know what Mentally Magnificent is and what it looks like, and that you're in the right area when you're ready to sign up and start following Crystal and getting some wonderful tidbits about trauma and to help you along your journey, whatever your journey is. Okay, because we are all here and we are aligned, me and Crystal. It's all about the elevating the mind, the body, and the spirit so that you can live a more balanced and harmonious life. We wish the best for all of you. Are there any closing remarks, Crystal, that you would love to give the family?
I would just say, when it comes to your forward movement, we all have a common denominator of some form of struggle. That is what's common amongst all of us. But what's also more common that we don't necessarily see practiced and publicized is our ability to use those same struggles to cause us to rise to something greater. All of us have. If you look at anyone in history who has made major contributions to the world, who we speak of today, and they're no longer here, take a moment to study their history and see that many of them have struggles that they've had to use to cause them to be the types of people whose names we still say today because they've made such a profound impact on our world. So we all have that ability in us. So I just want people to understand that the things that happen to you, as you said, Mayaka, do not define us. It's what we do with it. It's what we do with it.
Absolutely. What you do with it. You are the captain of your ship. You get to choose your destination, right? I love this. Family, I just want to thank Crystal again. Thank you for showing up, blessing her, giving her love, being here to really learn more about yourself and how you can grow. I really appreciate it. We had a fantastic time here. I actually just love her and what she's doing in her work. Again, I'm Mayaka Anderson, the owner of Rooted Vines, where we focus on aligning your mind, your body, and spirit. And this again was Crystal Turner here, our special guest with Mentally Magnificent. We love you, family, and we will see you again. We'll do another show in the future where we'll come and talk about a different topic to help you move along your journey. We are all doing this together. You are not alone. You are not alone. So thank you again. Absolutely. All right. We will see you again.
Thank you so much, Mayaka.
Oh, thank you, everyone. Crystal, for blessing us. Bye, everyone.